You're watching the Kentucky Derby Radar Show, only on Past the Wire TV.
You got two kinds of shoes. Should-haves, must-haves.
Sure, bad coffee. Go.
And here's Tampa in the final stages. The Santa Anita Derby goes to Tampa.
Well, we are here for only I think our second Kentucky Derby Radar episode this year, but it's probably the most special Kentucky Derby Radar episode we've ever had on Past the Wire. Because joining me, even though you can't see him, I assure everybody is here, is the legendary Steve Haskin, who, in addition to being one of the best turf riders ever, is probably as good a Kentucky Derby aficionado and as good a Kentucky Derby predictor as we could ever hope for or have. So, Steve, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I'm humbled.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm at least the camera is saving your audience from having to look at me.
If I was smart, I'd probably take it off myself as well, and it would probably increase the viewership. But I don't know. It might be a little.
No, you're doing good. Listen, if they don't want to watch you, they can look at those pictures behind you.
That's true. That's true. Let's hope the focus is on the pictures and what we've got to say. I don't think the introduction did you justice, to tell you the truth.
God, way beyond that.
I disagree. But I mean, when it comes to the Kentucky Derby, you truly are legendary. You've been writing about it and compiling an early list as far back as I could remember, and it's always been fascinating. And my favorite thing about the Steve Haskin list is it kind of does two things. It looks at what the horses have done, and that's what most people do. They compile a list based on what horses have done. But what you do is something that I try and do in my daily handicapping is you kind of project what they might do on the first Saturday in May, or what they're going to likely evolve to on the first Saturday in May. And I think that makes it a little bit unique, because a lot of people think they do that, but they really don't. They're kind of locked into the past performances. So before we get into the horses, can you just give me your philosophy on what you look for in a true Derby contender this early?
Well, there's so many things to look at. Obviously, as you do, I look at the thoroughgraph numbers just to get a pattern. I don't go so much by the number. I just want to see the pattern and what that might project to on the first Saturday in May. The main thing I look at is the race itself, the horse itself, even little things. If I watch their race, I always have to watch the head on. I see a lot more on the head on than I do on the side. You watch the head on and you can see when these horses are professional. I want to see if they're keeping a straight path down the stretch. I definitely want to watch their legs. If I can't see their back legs behind their front legs, I I know they're striding out perfectly. I don't want to see a horse with his legs in all different directions and paddling or anything like that. Not going to prevent them from winning the Derby, but you don't want to see it. It's still a physical flaw. So
Right.
I like to look at that, and I want to watch the jock. I want to see what he does on him. I want to see if he's thrown across. I want to see if he's hitting him unnecessarily or unnecessarily. So it's big on visual, because the numbers can fool you, as you well know. You can look at numbers all you want. You can look at past performances all you want. Sometimes even after the race, I like to watch the horses gallop out, obviously, and I also like to watch them coming back. I just want to see what they look like coming back. Do they look tired? Do they still spunky? I mean, are they still coming back with a good snap to their step? When they come to the winner's circle, I want to see how are their ears? Do they look alert? Do they even stand in the winner's circle well? Or if they're all anxious or something, I want to see how professional they are. And like in the case of certain horses, there's one horse which I was just watching, a horse called Jackson Hole, which is a Windstar horse.
Right.
And his numbers aren't that good. His race visually was very impressive. And I ranked him before I saw the Thoroughgraph numbers, but I loved what I saw. And little thing which I liked seeing when he came back, Flavien Prat had a smile on his face bigger than I've ever seen him have a smile on his face.
Right, and those are the little things that kind of go unnoticed or unrecognized, and those are the things that no computer or no past performances are going to pick up. And I sometimes watch how a trainer and a rider interact after a race like that.
Definitely
See that satisfaction or that sometimes disappointment. I've had it sway me the other way on certain horses. So those are some great takeaways. I love what you said about not being able to see their hind legs when you watch the head on. That's not something that a lot of people look for, and I think can really help people when they watch those head on. So, I mean, on behalf of all our viewers, thank you for that kind of insight. And anybody who's watching the show, you got to realize you're hearing this from somebody who's been around and knows the back end stories of some of the greatest horses of literally of all time, and goes back decades, watching these horses train for not only the Derby but for all kinds of big races. So why don't we? I mean, I don't think there's a better place to start than.
One thing, John. Just the one thing from the side view, I just want to mention too. The main thing I look on the side view is how smooth the horse's lead change is.
Okay.
And it's not going to tell you whether he's a good horse or a bad horse. I just want to know if he's got any quirks, if he's still a little bit green, if it takes him too long to switch leads.
Right.
Like there was one horse which I think cost him a little bit, is Renegade, the Todd Pletcher, Mike Rapoli horse,
right,
where he was still on his left lead when Paladin went by him.
Right.
And when he finally switched over, he stayed with him, but Paladin was gone by then, and there was no way he was going to catch him.
Right.
But you figured maybe next race, which is coming up this Saturday in the Sam Davis, I just want to see maybe if he can switch leads a little bit quicker and just get going, because he doesn't have a big turn of foot. When he's on the far turn, he's just more of a steady grinder. It just keeps coming at you.
I agree, and I think we've spoken in the past where I told you that Paladin was kind of very high on my list, and there's a couple of Chad's horses that really have piqued my interest this year. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, I said, I loved Sierra Leone, and I thought he had a really good chance going into the race, and I would say he delivered. He didn't get the job done, but he was certainly there at the wire. But I think this might be Chad's best chance to date at this point in early February.
Yeah. Which ones do you like?
I like Paladin a lot. Yeah. I like the horse that runs in the Withers, not the one that everybody else seems to like, School, whatever. I like the other one, Otino.
I'll have to say one thing about that horse. That was as gutsy a performance as I've seen in a long time. I thought the other Chad horse, Schoolyard Superman. I thought that the other Chad horse that was favorite in that race. Schoolyard Superman looked good in his race, but
Right.
the other horse, I thought he had him measured, and he just, after going head and head the whole way, going 1 1/8 miles, he just would not let the Chad's other horse get by him. Even when he galloped out, he couldn't let him get by him. So I was really impressed with that.
I agree, and getting to to add a little bit to some of the things you look at. One of the things that I look for this early on is I watch a lot of replays, and I always like to say I trust my eyes more than anything else. I like to look for that kind of fight and that kind of determination, because I think you really need that to win the Derby, or it certainly helps. It doesn't hurt. But I like to see some kind of toughness, some kind of grit, some kind of, battle testing, and rising to those kind of challenges when I try and spot horses this early out.
Oh, I totally agree. I mean, it's there's so many nuances in this. Everybody's got their own way of looking at things. And listen, we all know that horses fool you as well as anyone.
Absolutely.
So it's the old expression: it takes a horse to make an ass out of a person.
That's 100% true. We see that. We see that all the time. But we keep coming back because the science of it proves right for those of us who are students of the game often enough to make us believe.
Exactly. It's great to be a student, by the way, but you can be a student, but you got to graduate.
Absolutely. Which you certainly have done.
Well, I think you've done pretty well yourself.
Which I'm still trying.
We all are.
Yes, this is true. Let's run down your list and see who's on Steve Haskin's Kentucky Derby radar, for lack of a better term, in your list, and tell people first of all where they can find and follow your list, because you'll run it right up to the Run for the Roses.
Yeah, it's usually comes out on Tuesday. Depends on when Leonard from Secretariat.com. That's where you'll find it. Depends what time he's able to post it, but usually it's on Tuesday. Sometimes it's Tuesday morning. Sometimes it's a little later on Tuesday. So the main thing is that when you sit down after, especially like week 2 or 3, you're trying to get everything out in week 1. So I'm sitting there in week 2 and week 3, and I said, now what do I say about these horses? I've said everything. So you got to try and keep looking for new things, and you keep looking at pedigrees, and you look at the thoroughgraph. You try and break it down and just pace yourself.
I'm just going to try and bring your list up while we've got it here.
Yeah, I think we both have the same number 1, but for different reasons, maybe because I put Paladin, who was number 2, but I basically just moved him up because there was nobody to put number 1. I don't know if there's a real true number 1. I don't think there's. Last year we had 2 number 1s. I mean, we had Journalism and Sovereignty. The year before we had Fierceness and Sierra Leone. I guess we got a little spoiled. This year, once Ted Nafi dropped off, I said, wow, we got, a bunch of good horses here, but who's worthy of number 1? So I basically moved Paladin up for now. He's not going to run for a little while. At least we'll wait a little while, so he can't disappoint us. Right. But I did like the Rems. It didn't get great speed figures, but nobody has. And I tell you, the horses that have gotten good speed figures, they've all bounced, every one of them.
Correct.
And so if you go by thoroughgraph and you start looking at a horse like Further Ado, who goes from a 10 to a -1 and then bounces to a 5, the horse that just won last week in the Holy Bull nearly went from, he started at a 19, went to a 5 3/4, and then a 1, and of course bounced. And now you got to figure, now you want these horses to come back to where they were, but slowly. You don't want to go back to a 1 again, because then now that means they could bounce again.
Right. You definitely want that peak race to come, on the first Saturday in May for sure.
Exactly. Also in the Holy Bull, you had Cannoneer, who they made the favorite off a maiden race. He had gone from a 15 to a 2 and bounced to the moon. I don't even know, his number was outrageous. Listen, even Ted Nafi bounced in his second start. He went from a 7.5 to a 1. and bounced a little bit to a 3.5, but then he paired up that 3.5, and that's exactly what you want to see. Because
Right.
then he can move forward, heading back towards that 1, but it doesn't matter anymore. But these horses, It's Our Time, we started off with a 0 and bounced. Englishman started off with a 1. He hasn't been heard from since.
Right.
Brandt started off with a 2.5, and he bounced. All these horses, you don't want to see too fast, too soon.
100%.
So the thing with Paladin is that, he basically paired his first 2, and, I'm looking for a nice move forward.
I agree. So he's, we're in sync. Paladin is number 1 on Steve's Derby rankings on secretariat.com. And most of you who watch the show know that Paladin is my number 1 early Kentucky Derby favorite or preferred horse at this particular time. So let's move on. Steve's got Nearly as number 2, coming off that big race in the Holy Bull.
Yeah, you have to go by recency too. And as far as recency, even though I didn't rank him number 1, I ranked him number 2, even though visually I was very impressed with the race. I liked the way he did it. He did everything right. He was professional. But, to rank him number 1, when a horse comes home in 27 and then 7 for the last, there's slow and then there's really slow. And that was really slow. And I just like seeing horses the other way around. I don't want to see him go fast and then walk home. So I think he's a very good horse. And the track, sometimes you can forgive Gulfstream because it's can be quirky. You don't know exactly. The fractions there can be strange. So I don't know. But visually, he was good. I think he deserves number 2, only because I don't know if anybody else really does.
I can see that. I can get there. I was a little concerned that he came home slow, but when I watched the replay, he took a lot of heat early, and they went pretty fast early. So he's an inexperienced horse. He was going 2 turns the first time. How realistic was it to expect him to come home fast under those circumstances?
No, I didn't expect him to come home fast. I just didn't expect him to come home that slow.
Right.
When they start going 27s and 7 for the last 16th. It's just enough to listen. It's not like I ranked him 6th or 7th. He is 2nd, right. And he can go to number 1 at any time. And like I said, he did bounce from a 1 to a 5, which is fine because if he can, and his problem is that he's only going to run 1 more time.
Right.
So they're going to run him in the Florida Derby. He only has 1 more race to get back heading in the right direction again. So if he can run a 2 or a 1 in the go back to that 1 in the Florida Derby, then maybe he can move forward off of it. I would have preferred him having 2 starts, but they don't do that anymore. No horses don't run that much anymore. So he's got a long layoff now. He's got a couple of months to the Florida Derby, and we'll see how he progresses.
Agree. Same page so far. Renegade. Renegade, we may see Saturday, right, in the Sam Davis.
Yeah, he should be a big fan. That's a good spot for him, as long as he handles Tampa, which you never know.
Right.
If he handles Tampa, I think he's a very good horse. Listen, he did finish ahead of Paladin. I think that DQ could have gone either way. If they want, I could see if they want to take him down. If he didn't take him down, I could see that too. But he showed that he could run with Paladin, and again, I think he cost himself any chance of beating Paladin last time out in the Remsen. He was under pretty much of a drive on the turn. He really wasn't going there. But a lot of Todd horses do that. They look like they're going nowhere, but then once they turn for home, they keep building up speed and they keep building up momentum and they keep coming. And that's what he did. Absolutely. He might have done it a little bit quicker had he changed leads, but he went like 4, 5, 6 strides on his left lead. And that was exactly the time that Paladin went by him, and he wasn't going to catch Paladin. He's too good a horse. So I think he's ready for a big race. And, I think number 3 is a good spot for him. Even if he wins, I don't see him taking over number 1. But even if he wins, I think he'll probably stay where he is, as long as he doesn't get beat. in that race.
I think it's a great takeaway and a great observation on your part that him not changing leads at that exact moment that Paladin had that momentum to go by him, and that kind of influenced if not the outcome of the race, certainly how close it was or wasn't is a really good takeaway in that race, and it's something that might have gotten past me. So I'm going to watch that replay again and kind of develop a better take on that, because that's really, really interesting, and that's the kind of stuff I like to look for. So that's a great takeaway. Litmus test from Bob, who certainly knows how to win on the first Saturday in May. This horse hasn't run as much, but kind of has a real quiet reminder to me, only because he's ran a little bit more than some of Bob's other horses, and then some of the horses that we see heading into the Kentucky Derby nowadays with the lightly raced schedules. I don't know how many times he's going to run prior to the Derby, but he seems to be winning the war of attrition in Bob's stable by kind of showing up a little bit more than everybody else. What's your feeling on Litmus test?
My feeling is that Bob says that's his best Derby horse.
That's always something. I talk to him a lot, but I never ask him questions like that. But
well, he volunteered. I don't ask him who's best. I sort of try to allude to it, but
right.
Bob doesn't listen. He can tell you a horse is running in 3 days from now, and he's not.
Right.
In fact, Litmus test he entered, at Oaklawn, and he didn't run him the first time, and he's not going to run him the second time. And when I talked to him about that, he says, I had never intended to run him there anyway.
Yeah,
so
he'll
throw.
He's great. I talk to him a lot. I love Bob. I never ask him who he likes, and he never tells me unless we're just talking general. But one time he did tell me something. One morning he called me up. He says, listen, I know you never want me to tell you about nobody who I like when I get it. No, I'm not calling to tell you that. But I know you bet the pick sixes, and all I'm telling you is this. If you're going to use anybody other than my horse in this race, you're throwing away your money. Don't leave him out. Don't bet against him. I didn't tell you who to bet. I told you who not to bet against. Have a nice day. Hung up. Horse was life is good and one easy.
Well, that is the one thing about. But listen, I've known Bob for 30 years. I wrote his autobiography.
Wow. Okay.
So I think I know Bob. I know who he is. I know how he thinks, and I know how to interpret him. So we go back a long, long way. And you take what he says with a grain of salt. Except you can tell when he really likes a horse. That's a good horse.
Oh, absolutely. When I go to the Breeders' Cup, I'll watch all the horses work out with him all week long, and I don't ever have to ask him. I could always tell the ones that he's running that he likes.
Yeah, and I'll tell you another way to handicap Bob. When Bob points out another horse that he's running against, and he brags about that horse, you can bet that that's the horse to beat.
100%.
He knows the competition, but he's such a great evaluator of a horse. And everybody's saying, "Oh, well, he works his horses fast." Let me tell you, he trains the same way the old time trainers, Max Hurst, Sonny Jim Fitzsimmons, all those guys. They trained hard, and a horse had to withstand their training. The ones that couldn't, bye.
Right.
And the ones that did won the Derbies and the Preaknesses and the Belmonts and all the big races.
Right. I mean, Wayne Lewis, he kind of modeled himself off to, in a way, trained that way for sure.
Yeah, and it's the quarter horse training, with speed, and he likes speed. And listen, we all know that speed wins these races, but once he found out that he could run, that his horses could carry their speed. And I remember, I'll never forget, when he won the Santa Anita Derby with Cavanier, I was shocked. I said, wait a second, Bob Baffert won the Santa Anita Derby? That's crazy. He was strictly a sprint trainer. He could not train anybody to go long. He had just gotten in the game, and he won the Breeders' Cup Sprint with 30 slews.
Right.
And he had nobody on the Derby trail. And I remember he had one horse, and unknown horse, never did anything. And I called him up, but when Cavalier came along, and I said, what is this horse doing winning the San Diego Derby? It's a Bob Baffert horse. They don't win mile and eighth. Then he comes and knows winning the Derby, and that was it. And then he couldn't stop winning the Derby after that.
Right. And I don't think he's finished yet between you and I.
Oh no, I'm sure he's not. You know, the funny thing is that he's had the exact same career. And I know it's going to sound strange. He's had the exact same career as Tom Brady. He won three. He won 3 Kentucky Derbies early on. Tom Brady won 3 Super Bowls early on. Then they had a big drought of like 10 years where they didn't win the Derby, and then they won 3 after that.
Right, unbelievable.
They had like 2 separate Derby careers.
Did you ever tell him about that parallel? I'm sure he would get excited.
I did, yeah, I did. But yeah, it's just anyway. But you're looking at his horses. He changes his mind because, as he says, he calls audibles a lot, and he'll think one way one week and think another way because horses develop, and so he'll change his opinion. He'll tell me, horse doesn't want to go that far, and then the horse will start getting good. And I'll tell you, I'll give you one horse that he didn't think was a Derby horse. That's a horse that's running this week. Is Butane,
right?
And he's in the beginning, he was telling me, I don't know if he wants to go that far. And then he started training well, but he never really felt he wanted to run him in the Saudi Derby. That was the big race, and then go UAE Derby with him.
Right.
But the owner, after the horse worked, he had a tremendous workout, and the owner started getting Derby fever. So Bob then actually switched him and was running Desert Gate in the Saudi Derby. And then took him out in the Saudi Derby, and he's running on Saturday also. And I give him a big chance because these horses develop so fast that it makes you change your mind. I don't mind if he changes his mind. The horse in January is not the same as the horse in March sometimes.
100%. And I learned he's one of the few guys you never need to question about, his where and when to run decisions, for sure.
No, I give listen. I give Butane a shot. If he stretches out his speed, he's got a big shot. And Desert Gate, who he also questioned in the beginning, he's working like crazy. He's really working great right now. I've been watching some of his works, and he's working super. So I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, he's certainly got the past performances.
Yeah, we're going to see him this weekend also, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try and get through this. Strategic Risk, Mark Cassie's horse.
Okay, well, he's running this weekend too.
Right.
And listen, I liked his race last time out. I thought he was strong. He's really getting good right now. And I know Mark Cassie likes him a lot. And Mark is one of those trainers that, like Dale Romans and Kenny McPeak, they like their horses.
Right.
But I liked the way he did it. A lot of people didn't like that race because the pace was so slow.
Mm-hmm.
But he came home so fast. His closing fractions in that race were incredible.
Absolutely.
So
true.
I liked the way he came home, and I don't think the slow pace really helped him that much as far as who he is, because he's got tactical speed. He's shown he can run fast early, and he's just really getting good right now. And I think since he's been 2 turns, you can see what he's doing. He's winning off by himself, and he's getting stronger at the end of a race. So, again, these are all prep races. Everybody can say, "Oh, he didn't win. He's a bum." No, they're prep races. Nowadays, it's different because everybody's got to have points. Oh, if you don't get the points, I'm only going to run him 2 times, so he's got to get points.
Right.
That's you know as well as I do. That's not the way trainers used to think.
No way.
You're in the prep race. If he gets beat, no big deal. As long as he comes out of it well, does his thing. If he closes and runs second or third, fine. Let him improve the next time.
Right.
I didn't look at it that way.
I think that the point system has changed an aspect of the Derby, not necessarily for the better, and I mean better ER, not OR, because now you're really in a position, if you're a trainer, where you've got to get your horse to peak twice in the spring as opposed to once, because you want him to peak in that race. You're going for those points. or at least run his A race, and then you want him to come back on the first Saturday in May and run that A race, where it used to be you only really had to worry about running the A race on the first Saturday in May. And now, you kind of got to do it twice. And I think a lot of times that may lessen some of the performances that we see in the Kentucky Derby.
That's an excellent point. You're right. They do have to peak twice. That's one of the reasons why I thought if you're looking for the perfect like thoroughgraph pattern, what you have to do is look back at Sovereignty last year. He would always improve, and then every time he improved, he would pair up the number. Then he would improve again, and then he paired up the number. And then he went into that Derby saying, "Listen, this horse is going to run a monster number because he just paired up like 1.5s. So he's going to run a big number in the Derby." And he just looked from a speed pattern that he was going to really peak. But you're right, though. He peaked like every other race. He peaked again and then kept going.
Right. Commandment. Now, well, let me just stop. We're on the fifth one. Okay, so far, and I think this is a little bit interesting. Of your 5 horses, only 2 are on my list. Number 1, Paladin, and your number 4, Litmus Test. All the others, including Strategic Risk off the big win, and the others are not on my radar. But I keep mine very, very narrow. So
I can understand. I can listen. If somebody doesn't like Strategic Risk, I'm not going to put up an argument. And as far as Renegade, listen, Mike Rapoli said his best 3-year-old is his filly, Zany.
Yeah, I'm not surprised.
And she looks super. And not only that, but she's nominated for the Derby.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see him run her there either.
I emailed him. I haven't heard back from him yet, but I emailed him. I said, "Listen, are you going to run her against the Colts? Because you have to run for the points."
Right.
But if you look at her 2 starts, I mean, she looked awesome.
Well, we know how bad he wants the Derby, and if he thinks that she's his best shot, I say she's going to.
He said that's his best horse. And
he's going to take it.
I'm just curious, by the way, who's the rest of your top 5? I think you mentioned it, but I forgot.
We'll get to them. Just patient. Okay. Commandment, and I don't have 5. None of the 5's too many for me.
Oh yeah, right. You have 3.
Maybe 3 or 4. Commandment, who is very close to making my list, but didn't quite do it. But I do respect him, and I respect Brad Cox. Into mischief, but what is it about him that you like?
The main thing with him is the visual.
Okay.
The visual with him is that watching him, he gets faster in the last 1/8 of a mile. He gets faster with every stride. His stride lengthens. That's what I like. And in 2 of his last 3 starts, he galloped out like 15 lengths ahead of the rest of the horses. And the one time he didn't open up, there was another horse that was galloping out strong, and he would not let him pass on the gallop out. And they both pulled away from everybody.
Right.
So I just like the way that this horse comes home. Listen, Brad Cox had a lot of big horses, and some of them have fallen by the wayside already. But I think Commandment could be a live one, and he certainly has the pedigree, and he's getting good. I mean, I think his last 2 starts were excellent. So we'll see what happens. He'll stretch him out even more, and I think he's going to get better as he stretches out. But just watching this horse, he'll go from a half length in front to 5 at the finish, and you could just see that stride lengthening. And I want to see a horse. The expression "run through the wire."
Right. He
runs through the wire. When he hits that wire, he just wants to just keep going, and he does. So from that standpoint, that's why I have him ranked. And again, there's not a lot of horses that I really like. I shouldn't say like, but I don't love a lot of these horses. A lot of them have question marks. I have to, I'm going a lot now by visual.
Okay.
And I do like his thoroughgraph. I like his steady improvement, but he doesn't improve 1 or 2 points.
Right.
I believe he went from like a 12 to an 8 to a 5.
I
like that.
Right. I love that.
So I just think he's getting better. So taking all of that into consideration, I could have easily had him 5 and reversed it. I put strategic risk ahead of him because he's running before him.
Now, the next horse is in my opinion, a really intriguing horse. He looked so super in that win. We haven't seen Napoleon Solo since that monster-looking race. I originally had him on my list. Now I'm somewhat, I kind of put a big question mark over him because I haven't seen him. I don't know where he's going to wind up. I always get worried when they're kind of, missing. You might have more insight than I do as to where he is and what he's doing. But to me, he's kind of fallen off my radar. But if he runs back soon and runs back anything close to the other race, he'll get right back on it.
He's back training, and
okay.
he actually came back. He's only been working 3 and 4 furlongs, but they've been pretty quick, which is good, which I like to see. He did have a physical problem that was probably a little bit more serious than anybody might think. I'm not going to go into details with it. It's not up to me to say what it is, but he's back. He's back training. Chad Summers, he's undecided where he's going to go. He says he could go Tampa Derby, he could go Risen Star, could even go Gotham. I want to see him 2 turns. I'm also a sucker for the Champagne, old school. I love the Champagne. And again, I know he came home slow in that race, and I don't know if those early fractions are legitimate because going 44 and change and 107 and 4, it seems so outrageous. But even if they were a little off, he ran the second fastest Champagne in history. He ran the second fastest Champagne. He's tied for second with Seattle Slew.
Right.
And he's only a 5th off the fastest Champagne ever run. And I think the final time is legit. And even though he came home slow, I'm watching the stretch run. He is doing it so easily. And he's not tiring. He's striding out in the finish. I don't know how good he is. He could be a freak.
I can't argue with that off that Champagne. When I saw that, I was like, where did this race come from? I can't argue with it. I just, I knew something had to be amiss because he just kind of fell off the radar. And I don't think a horse that good, that looks, that sharp, is gone unless there is something floating around there. So, I was worried. But if he comes back and is anything like when he left or shows the natural progression from 2 to 3, he could be as talented as any of these horses.
Well, I'll tell you, if I was betting like a future exacta right now, I got to bet Paladin and Napoleon Solo only because Have Gun Will Travel and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. were 2 of my favorite shows.
Okay. No argument. Now, the next horse.
Further ado.
I will share something about this horse, even though there's all that hype around Ted Nafi. Ted Nafi never looked to me like a 1.25 mile horse, so right. He wasn't on my radar for that very reason. Even though nowadays horses that aren't 1.25 mile horses manage to win the Derby anyway, where way back when that really didn't happen as much as it does now, or at least it seems that way. But Further Ado is a horse that he's not really on my list, but I do think that he is a horse that has that look of a horse that has more to offer. I think he's going to get better, and I think he can wind up a serious contender come Derby Day. I'm going to make my final decision on him off his next race, which might be his only one before the Derby. I don't know, but he's definitely one that I'm paying attention to. What's your take on Further Ado?
You talk about horses having to peak twice. Like I mentioned earlier, I mean, he went from a 10 to a -1. How many 2-year-olds do you see running -1?
Right.
And then they stretch him out from that race. They stretch him out, but they run him again in 2 turns. Going in the Grade 2 race in the Kentucky Jockey Club, and he bounces to a 5, and he won the race by a length and 3/4. And you say, all right, well, he didn't dominate. The horse that finished second, that was flying at the end, Universe, came back and ran terribly this year. So you can say, maybe he didn't beat much. But listen, you come off a maiden race, you win a race like the Kentucky Jockey Club, I don't care. The fact that he was coming off a -1 and came back and won the race. And he did it early enough that if he comes back now, he's got a couple of races now, like I said, to start easing his way back towards that -1, which he has in his back pocket. You know, he he can run it. He's just got to get back to it. So if he comes back first time out, if you're going thoroughgraph, if he comes back, runs a 3, and then in his final prep he'll run another 1. Well, he can very easily win the Derby off of that. He's not going to bounce off of that because he's already has that -1. So he's a big, strong horse, and Spendthrift's Ned Toffee, who they accidentally named backwards, with Ted Noffey. I've known Ned for a lot of years, and part of me is rooting for him for losing the horse named after him and having this horse. But I try and look at it without with an unbiased opinion.
I try as well. Spendthrift is one of our biggest sponsors, has been for a long time.
Good, yeah.
So we always root for Spendthrift Farm, but I try to call it the way that I see it and stay unbiased. But I do like Further Ado, and I like them, better than Ted Noffey, even before Ted Noffey pulling out. So.
Yeah, I mean, he looks like a class horse. The fact that he can win a race like the Kentucky Jockey Club, which actually Kentucky Jockey Club has a terrible record in the Kentucky Derby.
I know. You would think the opposite, but
yeah, you would. But I don't even go by, because everybody says now, oh, the Wood Memorial, forget about it. It has nothing to do with the race. To me, a race is only as good as the horses who are running it. Unfortunately for the Wood Memorial, the good horses don't run it anymore. But you're going to tell me a horse can't win the Wood and then win the Derby? That's nonsense.
No, the timing is perfect. The distance is perfect. Aqueduct is perfect. Soon to be Belmont, but Aqueduct is perfect. Exactly. Now, the next horse on here, who Bob doesn't say is his best horse, but Plutarch is a horse that absolutely is on my radar. I think a lot of him. I think there are some tells in his past performances that he may be a little bit better or a little higher regarded than anybody is letting on, especially for a 1.25 mile race. I like the fact that Bob was running him in stakes while he was a maiden on the grass, which tells me he wanted to make sure he kept him at a distance. When he moves to the dirt, he seems to be effective over the dirt as well. He's certainly bred to be dirt by into mischief. Had a Stella Wind, who was a heck of a race mare for John Sadler. I think Plutarch is very dangerous. Maybe not for these preps, but for if he gets into the gate for the Derby, he's one of those horses that to me is going to be coming from off the pace in a race that might wind up having a lot of speed and some that can't get the distance and finish. And he looks to me like a finisher who's going to be coming. So I'm glad to see he's on your list as well. He's number 9 on your list. He's one of the 2 or 3 that are, maybe 4 that are on my radar. So talk a little bit about Plutarch and how he made it to Steve Haskin's illustrious list.
Well, first of all, I wound up back in December when I made a list of all the horses, the main horses to watch, under the radar horses that you might not know. He was the featured horse in there. He was one of 2 featured horses that I did a major feature and background on him. Back then, Bob volunteered that he was his sneaky Derby horse.
Okay.
When I spoke to him about a week ago or so, he volunteered that he was his sneaky Derby horse. So the fact that hasn't changed. And one of the reasons that I was fascinated by that horse, he's had the most jumbled career so far between the grass and the dirt. And it's very untypical of Bob to do that because he's not a grass trainer. And it was simple. He couldn't find the dirt races for him. And what I like about this horse is the fact that if you watch him, of all the horses I've seen, of all the Derby horses, he has the biggest turn of foot. He can accelerate. He's got a grass turn of foot that he uses on the dirt. If you watch his grass races and his dirt races, he'll go from 8th to 2nd on the turn. He accelerates on a dime, which I love to see. And he's still a little green. You can see on his grass races, he's finishing on his left lead, but that's on grass. And sometimes horses have a tendency also to stay on their left lead on grass. But I like the fact that Bob ran him in a big stake, when he was still a maiden. And I think that his last race that finally got to break his maiden, I just think that this horse has the physical talent to be a really good horse. And like I said, when Bob said that was a sneaky horse, that just put the seal on it. And listen, he's going to be a tough spot. Bob's got 3 good horses running Saturday. His Cherokee Nation, I know he's high on. He's a big closer, and Desert Gate is training like gangbusters for this race. And if Plutarch doesn't win, if he runs a good 2nd or 3rd and he's closing at the end, I'm fine with that.
I agree. I just want to see him finishing.
Yeah, he's got so much. He has so much foundation.
Right.
He has so much foundation. I don't need him to come back and run a monster race over here. I just want to see him run a big race. And you got to remember, this is Lewis is a mile now, which is one of the reasons why he didn't want to. He was thinking about running litmus test here, but he didn't want to back him up to a mile.
Right.
So this horse is backing up, and I just think that if he's closing, I'm fine with it. I just want to see a good, solid race from him.
From a selfish betting perspective, that's exactly how I'd want to see him run. I don't want to see him jump up and win one of these races now.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes I like a loss better. I don't want everybody latching onto that horse.
Quietly picking up some pieces and on his own, getting ready for the big dance.
Right. Listen, when Bob says it's a sneaky horse, he says it for a reason. He doesn't just say it.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you said that. He said that because, like I said, I didn't talk about that, but that's kind of mirrors what I said about him. With those races, I wasn't really thinking that he couldn't find spots on the dirt. I was thinking, he wanted to keep him at a distance and was running him on the grass as well. But I think he even ran him in a stake on Breeders' Cup weekend while I was out there. And he went off the favorite, took all the money in a tough field and ran okay. Dangerous horse, dangerous horse.
Not only that, but if you think his career so far has been jumbled, you should see his workouts. First of all, his last 2 workouts were 6 furlong works in 112.1 and 112.2. He's worked his last 4 works. Bob has had him on the outside twice and had him on the inside twice.
Love
and
that.
He has his workmate. It's a horse called Winston Avenue, who's a pretty decent horse, and they always manage to finish together. But when you put back-to-back 112 works in, he's ready. He's got that foundation, and he's sharp right now. So again, we'll see. The fact that Bob puts him on the inside twice and the outside twice, he's given him a lot of experience to see how he handles both. And I think he's run a good, solid race. That's all I'm looking for. Same with you.
I agree. Okay. Class president, Todd Pletcher's Uncle Mo.
Yeah. His numbers aren't as good as I would hope they'd be. But you know what? I know Winstar was high on him, and I liked his first start. The fact that they started him off at a mile and he won off by himself, didn't run fast, but I liked the way he did it. And then they wanted to run him at a mile again. The race didn't fill, so they drop him back into a 7 furlong stake. And I've been preaching that. People forget the fact that, again, I know it's old school and I'm living in the past. But you go back into the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, every single Derby horse, every champion, every great horse started their 3-year-old campaign in a sprint. Every one of them. I don't care if it was a stake. I don't care if it was an allowance race, 6.5, 7, whatever. They all started in a sprint. And nobody does that anymore. The last horse to do that, believe it or not, was Nyquist, who ran into San Vicente. and then wound up 2 races later winning the Kentucky Derby. And the horse that finished second to him in the San Vicente was Exaggerated, who finished second to him in the Derby.
Right. Yeah.
So I like the fact that he ran back at 7, ran into a Tiger in a very, very fast horse, Solitude Dude, and he wasn't going to catch that horse going 7 furlongs, but he hung in there. He chased him the whole way, and he ran a solid second. Again, like I said, his numbers weren't good. They weren't great, but I don't mind that because that was completely out of his game. And I think now going back to a two-turn race, I should say, for the first time, because the first time was at a mile, going to 2 turns now, he's bred to go long. I think he's going to relish stretching out coming off the sprint race. So that's why I'll give him a shot.
I can't say I disagree with you. You kind of got me a little bit more intrigued about him than I was in the past. So that's 2 horses you got me taking a much closer look at. Now I promised we would get you done by 12:15. It's 12:05. We've got the top 10 on Steve Haskin's Derby list that you can find on secretariat.com, and you can see the rest of the horses on the list. Now I'm going to throw out my little list, and I want you to critique it. I'll tell you how I got there, and you can critique it and either knock me down or boost my confidence.
I won't knock you down.
No, you can. I'd rather hear it straight from you than tell me. Okay, we discussed Paladin, who's my number 1. We discussed Plutarch, who I don't want to say is my number 2. I don't really rank them that way. I just say these are my horses. Okay. Further Ado is my fringe horse, and you got looking at this class president. But here's the other 2 that kind of have my attention and are kind of outside the box. Okay. I loved the debut of Canaletto. Okay. I know he's got only 1 start, but he went, I believe, a mile. He broke on top, came out running, dropped back, and came again. I love when a horse does that, especially first time out. I know the horse is bred. I know it's Chad. I know he won't be there if he doesn't, belong. And, years ago, I might never put a horse like that on my list. But now, for a horse to debut at 3 and to go into the Derby with only 2 or 3 starts is not that unheard of. It's not that crazy anymore. So he just looked to me by my naked eye, okay, time aside, everything aside, just watching how he ran, the way he ran. And there was another very highly regarded Coolmore horse in that race. And I knew through the grapevine that the much higher regarded horse by Coolmore was Chad's horse, even though Todd's horse took more of the money and was more of the buzz. But I loved Canaletto's race, and I said, you know what? This horse might be that good. So take on Canaletto.
Listen, I totally agree with you on him. The only reason he's not on there is that because I'm very stubborn. And I was reluctant to put Justify on. I said, I just can't do it. He just came by a little bit too late for me. 3 starts. It just, you just don't see it. I know everything is changing now. And, you look at a horse like Big Brown. But it's just so hard for me to grasp onto it. I really like the horse. And my main question with him is he going to be ready to run in the Derby? Listen.
It's a legitimate question.
When you have a lot of horses in the Derby, do you want to rush a horse who made his first start as a 3-year-old, in late January?
Right.
So I don't know. I marked down. In fact, I wrote there were 2 horses that broke their maiden this year that really impressed me from a visual standpoint. One is Canaletto, and one is Bill Mott's horse, Chief Wallaby.
Right.
He ran like a dirt. If he had a couple of races behind him, I'd love him. He did everything perfectly, like a real pro. Everything you want to see in a horse. Canaletto, the same thing. I love the way he just opened up on that field. He mechanically, beautifully. He moves beautifully. He's got everything. If he had 1 more start, I'll go with the 4 starts lifetime. or if he had to start at 2 and then came back and ran twice, I would consider. It's just so hard when they make their debut so late. If he wins the Derby, am I going to be shocked? Absolutely not. But I just, at this point right now, it's just hard for me to put a horse in my top 10 that only had the one start. But if you're gonna do it, I am not arguing with you because I think he's a really good horse.
I'm going to do it, and I'm going to put another off the wall one in there. That's probably not going to wind up in the Derby. I just don't think he's got the time, and I don't know that that's the plan. And it falls into that category of, you've got so many. Why are you going to rush him? But Potente, and I'll tell you what caught my eye about him. Bob had 3 horses in that race, all working well, all highly regarded. There were a couple other horses that weren't his horses that were highly regarded in there as well. John Sheriff's horse. There was another one in there. I forget who it was. And Bob scratched the other 2. And Potente got the job done, and I would say a little bit of workman-like fashion. But when he scratched the other 2, which he normally doesn't do, he'll run them against each other. You know that. I said, you know what? If he scratched the other 2, he must really like this one. I know he was very pricey. He's got that typical Baffert speed, and I'm just not going to overlook him. So I've got him on my lack of a better term radar as well. So what was your take on him in his race, Steve?
My take on him was the fact that Bob didn't think he was going to win. Bob doesn't say that much. He surprised him.
Right.
He says he wasn't quite ready for that race. He put him in there. I was expecting him to run a good race, but he said he wasn't really ready for that race. He just put him in there, and he was thrilled to death that he actually won the race. And I like when that there was, and the only other horse this year I can compare that to was Sherry DeVoe's horse, Golden Tempo,
right,
who had just won the Lecomte. First time out, going 6 furlongs. She says this horse has no shot. She said, I just want to see him close. That's all I want to do. But he closed all right. He closed from 10th and blew by the entire field in the stretch to win going 6 furlongs.
Right, and then was able to do similar going 2 turns the first time, which is not always easy to do.
So she was expecting, going short like that. She was expecting him just to close a little bit. That's all. The fact that he won the race absolutely thrilled her, and then comes back off that race and wins the Lecomte, with another huge stretch run coming from back.
Right.
So when Potente won, I started thinking about the same type of thing. When they surprise a really good trainer, then they have it. The thing with him is the same with Canaletto. It's just that it's so far behind is that I want to wait a little while. I want to see how they work. I want to see how they keep going.
I certainly understand that. I certainly do. But like I said, it's a different world now. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, years ago, I don't even think we'd be talking about these horses even taking.
Oh God, no, not, not at all.
We'd be saying maybe they're Travers horses. Yeah. I mean,
The difference between yours and mine is that I put out a list, and I put a big explanation with each one, and so many people don't even read the explanation. They'll say, how could you rank him there? I said, well, just read the comments sometimes. He explains it. But if I was going to come out and just say, these are the horses I like, I can understand having both. Especially Canaletto. I can understand having Canaletto. It's just when you have to rank them, and there's not much to say about them except, the fact that they won the race, and then have to explain, can he win the Derby having debuted so late?
Right.
Can he? Sure. But when I'm ranking them, I like to put them. I have a comment, a section after my ranking called "Knocking on the Door," which people like even better than the rankings because I go into a lot of detail. And I wrote a lot about Canaletto in knocking on.
I'm looking at it as we speak, and you've got both my horses on your knocking on the door. So I'm going to take that as encouraging, especially factoring in how old school you are and how reluctant you might be to put one, those on there. So I take that as a vote of confidence and a positive from my perspective coming from you. So,
and the way I look at it, if you like these horses, then I like them even more than I did before, because I have a lot of respect for the horses that you like.
Well, I appreciate that, Steve. Steve, we got a couple of months to the Derby. I hope we can do this again when we got a little bit more info before the Derby, because I got you on time, 12:15. So I think I kept pretty good to schedule. I didn't want to take too much of your time. I appreciate it. I know you got another engagement, but I mean, it's truly a privilege to sit down and talk horses with you and have you on Past the Wire. You've got an open invite anytime.
Thank you. Same. That's a lot of fun.
It's great. I mean, I could talk horses with you till dinner time, honestly. So, you know, I just appreciate your time. It's great. And I'd like to get you on here one time.
Sure. Anytime. Just let me know.
Just talk some great Haskin stories. I mean, I know some of them, but you've got stories. I write some crazy stories and great articles about
your articles are super
about like the milkman and the brains of it. You've got stories that like make mine look like the Walt Disney World. You know, I mean, you've got some great ones. So I would love people to hear some of that stuff, because we are in such a colorful sport with such colorful characters, and none of that stuff ever gets talked about. And a lot of whining and complaining. So I'd love you to tell some of those great stories.
Oh, I'd love to. In fun, some of those actually, you know, what the last book I wrote, you know, when I was working for the writing for the Blood Horse, there's a book called Tales from the Triple Crown, where I tell all these behind the scenes stories that nobody really knows of all the races the Triple Crown races I've covered. And another publishing firm bought out the firm and re-released it, and had me add 3 chapters on it.
That's phenomenal.
So I added 3 chapters, and I got a call from the Keeneland Library, and March 18th they want me to come down there and give a lecture on that book and tell stories from the Triple Crown. So that should be a lot of fun.
That's great. Yeah, no, that's great, and I think the game needs more of that, because we don't really have enough of that.
Because there's no sense of history anymore.
That's great, yeah, and that people don't even know about and think about and talk about. And when you bring some of that stuff to life, it's phenomenal. I try and do that in my own way, but it pales, you know, in comparison to what you can do and bring.
Yeah, well, listen, you got the same stories. You know, we both aqueduct junkies.
Yeah, right.
You know, I mean, we both have our aqueduct stories.
Listen, the best way for me to go back there is to read that article you wrote about the command bus and the smells. And
the smells, right?
It brings me back. You know, it brings me right back to those days.
Yeah.
So
they were fun.
Great stuff.
Fun days.
Steve, thank you so much for coming on. Steve Haskin, he's legendary. It's a privilege to have him on. I hope everybody enjoys this as much as I did. And there's a lot of great Derby takeaways here, not only for this year, but for every year, with some of the things that, you know, Steve looks for and scopes out early on. So thank you all. Steve, I'll shut down the recording and say a quick goodbye to you, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay. Right. Take care, John.
All righty.
Here comes journalism, here comes sovereignty, and they square off, heading to the final front. Sovereignty wins the Derby!
You're watching Past the Wire TV. Hit that like button and subscribe to Past the Wire TV. Nobody does it better.